Welcome to the Queer Cinema Show. My name is Trent Nakamura. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm your host. Today's guest is Savannah Ward. Savannah is a writer and graduate of the Outset Young Filmmakers program at Outfest. I had the joy of working with Savannah during their time in the program and watched them bloom as both a storyteller and writer. Since graduating, Savannah wrote, crowdfunded, and produced their first short film, Meta, and has worked in the writers' rooms for both NBC and Freeform. Savannah's latest project, Cruel Summer, will be premiering in less than 2 weeks on April 20th on Freeform. In today's episode, we discuss a couple of different resources. You can find the info for them in the description box below. Please welcome Savannah Ward. Hi, Savannah. Welcome to the Queer Cinema Show.
Hey, Trent. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know you've worked on Cruel Summer for Freeform, as well as Council of Dads for NBC. Can you tell me a bit more about how you found your way in a writer's room and how you worked your way up?
Yeah, so I really believe in the assistant track. And I think it's for a certain type of individual, right? I knew I wanted to be in TV and film since like 5 or 6 years old. I think I saw Spider-Man 2. I think that was like my sort of like, oh, I have to be in film and TV. This is awesome. And so, I went to film school and everything. But when I came back out to LA to start looking for work, I was like, I'm a Virgo moon. I like routine. I like order, right? And so I was like, what is the most direct path to a writer's room, right? And I started to look into things, and I sort of saw a linear line of, if you're a Hollywood assistant, at an agency or a production office, if you're good enough, you'll most likely move on to being a writer's assistant or a showrunner's assistant or a script coordinator, which are all roles in the writer's room, right? So I basically got out here and I was like, I need to become the best assistant I can possible, right? And so I just did that at different jobs. I once worked at a unscripted company, where I learned everything about production. And I think unscripted is like really fun because it's cheaper and it's quicker and it's really guerrilla style, right? But I think I always knew I wanted to be in scripted. And so I just hopped around to production company. I worked at Titmouse for a little bit. And then as I was happily working at Titmouse, one day on Facebook, someone was looking for trans aspiring writers. And I was like, I'm a trans aspiring writer. And I got a coffee with this person, and her bosses were looking for a new assistant who was trans, because they just, they're allies and they like wanted to bring someone from a marginalized group up. And we clicked really well. I met with them and we clicked really well. And then I started working under an overall deal for 2 writers, where luckily they got a show. And when they got a show, which was Council of Dads, I literally just walked into their room after 6 months or so. We had a relationship and I was like, I'm going to be the writer's assistant. And they were like, yeah. So in some ways, I very much, I feel like I created my own path, but I always had insight of like, this is where I want to go, which I think is really helpful to sort of have an idea at some point of where you want to go, because it's very rare that I feel that things just fall into your lap in Hollywood or the industry. Like, you really do have to be firing off all your gears and modems in every way to sort of continue to build that momentum to whatever career you want to make.
What would you say your why was? We talk a lot on the show about like your why as an artist, and I'm curious what your why was to becoming a writer and working as a writer.
I think growing up here in Los Angeles, I went through the whole like, I'm going to be a director, I'm going to be a producer, now I'm going to be an actor for some reason. But I think like as I sort of evolved in each one, look, I got control issues. I was like, I want to be who has the most control, right? and who sort of gets to make the big decisions. And I think over the years, as I learned more and more, especially in television, I was like, oh, the showrunner is the big boss. The showrunner gets to decide the story, right? And I think stories have just always been important to me and my family. You know, my family, my like small, like, you know, parents and me, sort of have a reputation of being like big story embellishers, which my father always says, don't let truth get in the way of a good story. And so I've always just been a storyteller since like the time I was a child. I was like making up stories all the time, telling white lies here and there. But I think for me, the why is, you know, I'm a Black queer trans individual. I was raised by two white gay men. I was a pretty lonely kid, and not to say that I didn't have friends. I had many friends who I loved dearly. But when I look back at my childhood, I just had no one that was like me at all in my life. And that was like a really sort of depressing place to be. But I saw parts of myself in TV characters, you know, in Buffy, in Glee, even though it's cringy now, in Pretty Little Liars. But like I found parts of myself in TV and in film. And, you know, we've been telling stories since the dawn of time. And I think it does something for us. And it teaches us and it opens our perspectives. And I think the reason I write is to not only bring more representation so that there won't be more lonely kids like I was, um, but also just, I think it's really a part of being human, just the basis of storytelling. I think it's like a skill we'll never let go of. And if I can be a part of that process, why not?
What tips do you have for creatives and writers who are still in college that are perhaps looking to, that will be graduating soon and looking to make that first step into as an assistant or, you know, getting their foot on the ground and in the door?
Well, I mean, so I have two sort of like ways of advice. The first being annoying advice, which is get an internship, which is hard to do, right? And I only say that because um, if you really want this, right, you're most likely going to move out to New York or Los Angeles, maybe Atlanta too, right? When you get to those cities, especially Los Angeles, you're going to be up against probably like 4,000 other graduates who just graduated and want to be in the industry, right? And so you have to make yourself sort of stand out. And I think a great way to do that is to get an internship. And it doesn't need to even be an internship from a super like well-known company. I think, you know, I did an internship. I went to school in Chicago. I did an internship with Lena Waithe, because she went to my college. And so I actually Facebook messaged her one day and I was like, I need an internship. And she responded to me.
Wow.
So I started to do coverage for her, which was great. And then I also just did a internship with a professor's production company. They did like sci-fi sort of mixed media out in Chicago. And that was like a super easy internship. I like barely did anything, but it was enough to put it on my resume and get college credit. And so, you know, when I went out for jobs, people were like, oh, Savannah has experience already, right? You always sort of want to make your resume look like you already know what you're doing. Even if you don't, it's okay to lie. Don't tell everyone that, but I do sometimes lie on my resume for good reason. The other thing you need to do is be reading scripts. And like, I feel like it took me a while to really understand how important that is. I really honestly didn't sort of inundate myself with reading scripts almost weekly until the pandemic. But even, you know, even in this year, I think I've read around 35 to 40 scripts just for my own sort of writing research. And I've seen my writing, you know, and I got staffed last year too. So this was post me getting staffed. I feel like my writing has jumped like 10 or 20 levels just because I've been religiously reading scripts over and over again. There's so much to mine from them. And Quentin Tarantino, like all of his scripts are just stolen moments from other movies, right? And I think even practicing that, if you have a scene that you want to write, or you even have a short idea that's slightly similar or has the same essence as another movie, read that movie, watch that movie, see how they did it, and then see if you can even mimic the style of the writing of that script into your own writing, because that's one of the best skills that you'll ever need for television writing, is copying someone's voice. So yeah, internships, coverage, watch TV and film. And also, this is a little bit premature, but it will help you. If you can start to identify what you think your voice is, and that doesn't matter if you're an actor, director, producer, or a writer. I think everyone has a voice that they're really, really good at. And when I mean voice, it's sort of what I'm talking about is the stories you like to tell, the genre you like to live in, the sort of almost like the shape of uh, narratives that make you light up, right? And for me personally, like over the years, I have discovered my voice is pretty like genre heavy, very mystery thriller horror based, but usually it's going to be stories about loss and like the paradoxes of loss and grief and love and joy. And I discovered that because I love to watch really dark genre pieces, but always that move towards levity and that move towards understanding. Um, so yeah, there's like so many things you can do, but I think those 3 or 4 are the strongest ones to focus on.
Yeah. Two takeaways from your story you just told. I mean, one with the Lena Waithe story. I mean, which is incredible. But I think there's almost a lesson of shoot your shot. You
Yes.
know, I mean, reasonably, of course.
Yeah.
Don't go to Lena Waithe's house or someone's house and knock on their door and say, "Hello, hire me." I think there's certain boundaries to respect, but of course, put yourself out there and shoot your shot. And I think the other lesson that I think about a lot, and the way that I could expand kind of the coverage, learning to do coverage
Yes.
for writing and scripts is. I think for young college creatives, one of the best thoughts that I have is to really learn a tangible skill while you're in college,
Mm.
whatever that may be. So if you want to be an editor, you got to learn, Adobe Premiere and Final Cut and all these different editing platforms and get good at knowing the technicalities of those elements. And I think as a writer, learning coverage and learning how to provide that on scripts is super important to working your way up and getting started when you graduate.
Yeah, because also I think the hardest thing for me for writing coverage or just understanding script format is the subtext, right? And it takes a long time to not only recognize when subtext is happening, but understand how the writer implants subtext or seeds subtext. And it's a really hard skill, but that's the one skill you're going to need if you ever want to be a writer's assistant, right? And so I think that's a great idea, writing coverage. And I think what we mean by coverage is, you're writing a synopsis, usually like one paragraph, probably 4 or 5 sentences of what that script is. And then you're just writing your thoughts. But I think good coverage is, you're not just writing, I really like this. Like you're really trying to get into the format of why something is good. Was it character? Was it, grounded in emotion? Did it have a really surprising format for like a scripted show? Is there a really unique POV? These are all things that, and I'm sure that you could look up on Google, like what you need to do for coverage and just follow that. I also want to mention, since you brought it up again, the Lena Waithe thing, I want to tell everyone I did this way before she got her Emmy. So like, this is not something that you could like do today. I knew about Lena because she had gone to my college. Dear White People, which she produced, came out my senior year of college. And so she really came onto my radar as someone who had graduated and was succeeding in Hollywood. And that, just what you're talking about, this window of opportunity. There are correct windows of opportunity. And they're almost always before someone wins a gold statue. After someone wins a gold statue, I don't recommend hitting them up on DMs or like private messaging. But if there's like an up and coming writer that you're following, why not tweet at them? Why not DM them? You know, I've responded, I've met with some people, I've read some people's scripts sometimes. If you send me a really nice message, why not?
I wanted to talk about Meta, your short film that you wrote and produced. And I know that you guys ran a crowdfunding campaign through Seed&Spark where your team raised $12,030 for the film. Can you tell me a bit more about why your team decided to go with Seed&Spark and that process for crowdfunding?
Yeah, so Seed&Spark to us just felt like the obvious choice. And that's because one, it's run by women, which is awesome, right? And just for context, like Meta was it was an 85% queer / trans crew. And so even having Seed&Spark as our sort of like platform for fundraising was really important. Like I always wanted to be inclusive with every step, right? But Seed&Spark just provides so much. And one of, I think the best things they provide is they don't let you go live until their representation approves your sort of fundraising page, which was extremely helpful because there were just things that we thought, we were like, oh, we know how to do this. We've done this before. We'll just make our own page. And then we submitted it to them and they came back and they were like, hey, you know, like you should edit this page to look like this. It will help you get more views. And so having basically a supportive team member was really important in that decision because we had raised before on Indiegogo, which was really hard and really brutal. And Kickstarter is a great platform, but there's a little bit more risk with Kickstarter. I believe that Kickstarter, you have to reach, is it 100%?
100%.
100%, which was really scary to us because, you know, Meta is about like a trans boy and we were like a little bit worried that people weren't going to be into it just because it's a marginalized community. So I'm pretty sure Seed&Spark is 80%. And that felt like a attainable goal. And so those are the real reasons. So it was the support, the women, just a woman founded operation, and then the 80%, which we were, no matter what, we were like, we're going to hit that 80%, which was, it wasn't like fully easy, but I feel like Seed&Spark's platform really provided all the necessary tools for us to at least go out there in the big sort of brush at first. And then you start texting your friends and being like, hey, I'm going to send you this link. You got to give me money, which I think is, they don't tell you that, but almost always I have found when you're up and coming, you need to be bold enough before you start fundraising to know that you're going to have to text probably 50% of your contacts and be like, hey, I'm making this movie. We're great friends. Remember that drink I bought you at the bar 4 years ago? Can you please send me $50?
Yeah, that's real. That's real.
Know, it's just a part of it. And it's fun. And you know what? We're still shocked to this day that we raised that much. I thought we were going to make like 8K or maybe 10K, but 12K was really, really unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really was a great campaign that you guys ran. And I mean, I think that, you know, part of, you know, there's a lot of different tips that can go into crowdfunding and whether it be the rewards that, you know, you list for the backers or whether it just be the updates that you provide along the way for the backers. I think that's all super valid, but I don't want to get caught up too much in just the crowdfunding world. But I mean, because I think that the other part to really celebrate about Meta is just the number of festivals the film has played at and the amount of audiences that have seen the film. And I was wondering if through this process there was a story that stood out to you. You know, I know what's interesting is I would say a majority of these festivals did have to played during COVID, you know, and while some of them was that in-person experience, and you know, in getting to play your film, you know, all over the world and hopefully experience those festivals in different ways. What did you get from coming out of the festival circuit?
Everything, everything. So, I'm gonna slightly divert because the thing that I got necessarily wasn't in the festival world, right? But placing in festivals, just obviously not like winning awards, but just, you know, getting accepted into festivals, changed my career sort of trajectory in the sense of I have discovered this year that if you're in TV and film, not necessarily the film festival world, but the more like Hollywood LA side, uh, it's really impressive if you have a short film, like on a level I was not aware of before. You know, I thought short films, at least for the TV world, were sort of just like, meh, you have a short film, cool. No, it has become the calling card. It has gotten me meetings with companies that I thought I would never ever get to meet with. And that's because it was super original. And I thank Outset for that because I feel like without the fellowship, I wouldn't have been able to write something so sort of unique and personal.
Mm.
But it has really changed my life because it is the thing that when I meet for generals with networks, that's the thing that makes their eyes light up. They're like, you fundraised to produce your own short film that is now playing in multiple festivals around the world, and their jaws drop, you know? And it has even led me, I got some feature interest into it as well. And so I'm currently writing a feature version of it because the short did so well. And I think that is, to me, what I got out of all of it was not just sort of like what it means to create your own film, but what it means to create your own IP and own it.
Mhm.
And in this like Hollywood world where IP is everything, I didn't realize that short films are considered IP,
Mm.
right? And
Right.
so if you go into a meeting, you're like, I have this 10-minute IP. They're like, oh, oh my God, like this is amazing. What can we do with this? And it really has just, you know, changed my path and like what I think I could do, because now I'm like, what's my next short film? What's the thing that's going to like get me into more rooms that I thought I could never get into? So I just think it has taught me the power of telling your own story.
The next thing I really wanted to talk to you about today, I know you're on the board of directors for the new Trans Film Center.
Yes.
And for our viewers out there who don't know what the Trans Film Center is, can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yes, so the Transgender Film Center is created by Rodgers, who I had the honor to participate in Outset with them. And we've become super close. And so the Transgender Film Center is basically a nonprofit that sort of the core is to help provide trans filmmakers opportunities. And the opportunities can be grants. We're hoping to establish maybe some panels or some mentorship programs, but it's basically to help trans filmmakers connect easier to Hollywood and the film industry. And so we're sort of new. We opened up a Trailblazer grant that we're going to announce who receives those probably in late spring. But we're really just getting started, but there should be some really exciting things coming down the pipeline, especially for Trans Day visibility later this month. So definitely look out for some surprising things. But really, we're really just trying to create a hub for trans filmmakers. I think because, you know, I think since even the Me Too movement, I think marginalized folks in general have been getting a lot more opportunities and representation. But there is sort of this lag behind with trans filmmakers, and whether that's directors, producers, writers, and especially like behind the scenes, like crew positions. There just could be more of this. You know, I feel like I'm pretty sure Sav and I could name every trans person working in Hollywood if we wanted to, because that's how small we are, right? And that doesn't mean that there's not more trans filmmakers out there. There are many more of us. They just are not being connected appropriately into jobs, into our market, into our stories. And so the Transgender Film Center is sort of like steering the ship towards like, what does equity look like for trans filmmakers?
Yeah, yeah. How can viewers participate or support or find out more about the Transgender Film Center?
Well, you can follow us on social media at, I'm pretty sure we're Transgender Film Center on most things. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure we are. You can also, we have a website. Our Trailblazer grant is closed for right now, but we'll probably open up another one towards the end of the year. But I think just checking out the website, following us on social media, because there will be a lot more things coming out as the months roll around. And probably another good thing would be to follow Rodgers or I, because we both will be providing lots of context of cool things, opportunities, you know, panels, or just even some job opportunities.
Yeah. For the viewers, follow both of them, or
Yes.
follow all of them, rather, including the Transgender Film Center. It's now time for the Creator Spotlight, which is my favorite part of the show. In this section, you can spotlight up to 2 LGBTQ creatives who you think the industry or the world should be watching.
So 2 people, one of them is he's been around, but I feel like he doesn't get as much praise as he deserves to get, which is Patrick Ian Polk, who created Punks and Noah's Ark, and also wrote and I think helped sort of create P-Valley. And he was an independent filmmaker, made, you know, Punks, I'm pretty sure in the late 90s. And it was good enough where he was able to pitch his own show, which was Noah's Ark, which, if people don't know, it was sort of like the, I think, the better Black version of Queer as Folk. In the late 90s, early 2000s. And, you know, I feel like he is someone who's always been around and has always, no matter what, he's always been creating queer stories. And I just feel like not as many people know who he is, and he deserves to be known. Another person who's newer, or just newer to the sort of industry, is Tori Peters, who wrote Detransition Baby, which I just read, which is amazing. I recommend all queer people read this book because it shows flawed queer characters, which I feel like is actually really rare to find. There's always sort of like, we're like the gay best friend, or like we're the quirky friend, and it's rare that, other than like Queer as Folk and L Word, where you really get to see queer, gay, lesbian people, trans people be dicks. So I appreciate that type of narrative. And she also, I know, is partnered with showrunners, and I'm pretty sure they're pitching Detransition Baby as a show. And if you have read the book, you recognize that Detransition Baby is really like, it's like Sex in the City for queer people. And so if that gets greenlit anywhere, I am so excited, because I think that is just going to be a show that's going to change the game for the pink dollar in queer media.
Well, that's all the time we have for the show today, but thank you so much for being on the show, Savannah.
Yeah, thank you. This was super fun, and I hope that everyone got something from it. And feel free, tweet me, Instagram, DM me, ask more questions. I'm always here to help.